All right, everybody, we are back for Wake Surfology. My name is Jake Breedlove, and this is my co-host, Mr. Dylan Ayala. We've had a great last week, getting some surfing in and some other pretty awesome news, I'd say. Mr. Dylan here got married.
Yep, I'm a married man now.
He's a married man.
It was a fun week. It was a lot, but it was fun. Still pretty tired from it, but yeah, thanks for coming, Jake. That was so fun.
Yeah, Dylan got married to Hannah, and I think they're such a great couple. It was so great to see y'all get married, and it was such a special moment. So we're really excited for y'all moving forward. And then y'all are another married professional couple. Wake
I
Surf
know.
couple.
I know. I think we're some of the only ones, you and I.
I think so. Yeah.
But
there are a couple others. But
yeah, it was fun. It was a fun weekend, and even you and I and my friends went wake surfing maybe 2 days before or the day before, and it was so fun. It was so fun to see all my friends. A lot of my childhood friends came, and it was just a great time.
great time. Yeah. Those are some cool kids. Yeah. I enjoyed seeing them, hanging out with them.
Yeah, they're so funny.
Yeah, they are very funny guys.
But yeah, so we kind of have like a episode today about competitions and kind of like our approach to competitions, maybe mindset, and even like looking back how we felt in amateur, semi-pro, pro, all the different feelings and kind of like where we started and maybe how we feel from now versus then too.
Yeah, kind of, the difference between winning and losing, not just in competition, but just with your riding in general. Because there have been times when, we've been on top of the world and our riding has been really awesome, or we've been winning a lot of events and stuff. But then there are also times when we aren't doing well or we don't win, or sometimes at home our riding time isn't as good as we might want it to be.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and kind of like what that does to your mindset and like if you're winning competitions or even, like you said, winning the day and winning your riding sessions and riding really good, what that does to your mindset versus like if you're doing really bad or not doing as well as you want, kind of what that does to your mind and maybe how to break through that.
Yeah, because we want to make sure that if you are, hitting some rough spots with your riding or your competition, we want to make sure that you can, try to do your best to get out of it and know some ways to build confidence and ways to push yourself through, little road humps and
Yeah, because it's super easy to get stuck and in your own head. So, yeah, I think today's episode will be really cool. It's something that I wish I could have listened to back in the day when I was first getting started, and even maybe it'll help us now.
Yes, sir. And yeah, we only, would only get bits and pieces from other riders that we got to see at events. It's not really something that we had access to or hearing full-on stories about what it was like competing all the time. So
Right. Yeah. All right. Let's dive into it.
yes, sir.
Okay. So, just starting off, like maybe we can go back to our amateur year and kind of like our mindset around our amateur year, how we were feeling. I know that my first year competing, I didn't really know what to expect. I knew where my riding was at and what I kind of wanted to learn because I had a coach and I was taking some lessons. So I had an idea of where I wanted to be. But like I didn't put a cap on myself at all. Like I always saw videos and I always believed that I could land those tricks and learn those tricks. And really just like day to day, I was always practicing, and that was building so much confidence in myself. But just like really starting off with my first season competing, I felt very confident and very excited because I just loved the sport. How did you feel in your amateur year?
My first amateur year, I didn't go to a lot of events, but I felt really good when I went to them just because it was a new scene, a lot of really cool people, and I honestly didn't really know what to expect as far as where I would stand compared to other riders. So initially it wasn't, anything too scary or anything like that. I didn't feel unconfident really.
Yeah.
Except for when I got on the wave at the first event because it was at Texas Ski Ranch and they have very shallow water.
Yeah.
So my riding didn't go super well there, but I had a really fun time, and I still did ride pretty good. I ended up getting first at that event. So that kind of gave me a lot of confidence moving forward. And then I ended up getting like a third place at the next event that I went to, which I felt really confident with that too, because I was thinking, this is the first time I've ever done this, and I'm placing still.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to be first place at all, and that was really cool. And then I went to the World Championship because, I got invited and I got really lucky to be able to do that. And I remember like getting in the water and starting my ride. And after my first or second fall, I can't remember, I wasn't doing well. And I like got really nervous and sick to my stomach, and I like threw up in the water.
Because you were so nervous.
Yeah, I was like really nervous. And I did not feel good about it, but I'm pretty sure I like finished off the run like okay. I still didn't like place very well, but ultimately I like was able to move on from it and still have a good time because the atmosphere at the comps were really fun. But yeah, like we had our time in amateur, but I'm kind of curious to know like right before you stepped into amateur and right before you stepped into competing. So you said you had a coach. Did you have him like for a while before you competing?
So I moved to Arizona in like winter of 2016, and my first competition was May of 2017. So I took like maybe 4 hours of lessons, and yeah, so like before I even started competing, I was getting some coaching, and kind of like that was really nice to know almost what to expect, and like for them to help me with my competition run so I wasn't just guessing or whatever it was. So yeah, I did have a coach before I started competing. And at my first competition, I got second place. I didn't really know exactly what to expect or what it was going to be like, and I was super pumped on the second place. And like I used to always think that, or at that point in time, like I needed to land my 360 to like win the comp, when I really just needed to focus on my tricks. I almost blacked out during that run. It's a lot to take in for your first competition. So, like I was really focusing on trying to get the 360, and I didn't even land the 360. But yeah, I had a coach before I started.
And so, yeah, so you said you had like blacked out or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting you say that because, a lot of people, say go out and do your best or like just do your tricks. And it's easier said than done because a lot of weird things can happen out there.
Yeah.
Like blacking out or just not being in the right headspace.
Yeah.
Like your mind can be somewhere else completely, and you might snap out of it for a second and then realize, oh wait, what was I about to do?
Right.
Like, the buoy is right there. We're starting right now. What's
Yeah.
going on?
Yeah, and I think that like we'll dive into it maybe a bit later in the episode, but like being confident in your riding so that if that does happen, your body just kind of takes over and does what you know how to do, But like I think that's something that a lot of people go through, especially when you first start competing, is kind of like blacking out or being super nervous, not really even knowing what's happening because it's so much adrenaline and there's so much new things.
Yeah. So before you started competing, like going into it, how long did you train for? And when you made the decision to start competing, like what was your mindset then? Like, were you nervous? Were you just excited because you thought it was cool?
Yeah, I was super excited. I was nervous, but like I said, I moved to Arizona end of end of winter in 2016, and then like as I moved to Arizona, we went on a boat demo, and I met some people who were telling me about a competition in Arizona that was in May. So I had like 5 months to prepare for it, and like from that moment on that boat, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this competition and see how it goes. And I was just super excited for it. It was something super fun to work towards, and I was just stoked. Like I said, I didn't know what to expect, but I was excited.
Nice. That's really cool. So yeah, honestly, my takeaway from like hearing both of our first times, our first time competing and kind of going through that, I feel like, some of our expectations might have been, lowered a little bit by what we might have expected initially.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we still had a great time, or we were excited because it was a new thing that we thought was really cool. We felt, welcomed, and we were excited to, get involved with it.
Yeah. And something super cool too about like being an amateur and just starting is I remember not ever putting a cap on myself of I wasn't like I never cuz I didn't know everything. I didn't have all the information. So I was always I just wanted to get better, and sometimes like not knowing things almost helps you in a way because you're not expecting less of yourself, or you don't know like the patterns of what people have learned and how long it took them to learn. You just know that you want to learn that trick. And like I never really put a cap on myself when I was an amateur.
That's really cool. I think I probably did the same thing, or I wasn't necessarily stressing myself out with thinking of what tricks I needed to learn next type of thing. Just kind of enjoying it, doing what I know how to do, and going out and ride.
Yeah. So from your amateur year to semi-pro, how did things change for you? Did you win worlds your amateur year?
So I actually did 2 years amateur.
Okay.
My first year, I only did 3 events, and one of them was the world championship. And I didn't place. I don't even think I placed in like the top 5 riders at that one. Wasn't a big deal, but it was the year after that I went into amateur again, and I went to a lot of events that year, and I got first at all of them.
Yeah.
So that was definitely like a big confidence booster, and I felt like I felt amazing. It was awesome, getting first at all the events that I went to and riding really good and just having a blast, at home riding and practicing and at the competitions.
Yeah. Yeah. My first year in amateur, I was doing pretty good. I was winning competitions. That first one I got second. I don't remember exactly how many I won or lost, but like I was feeling really good going into Worlds, and I ended up getting second place. And like that was almost better for me because if I like it really lit a fire underneath of me to like get better because I didn't like losing after training so hard. So that next year I trained the hardest that I think I ever have from going from amateur to semi-pro. I went from like riding maybe 3 times a week to like 5 to 6, and I got a trainer at that point too, and I just went really hard because I wanted to win.
Yeah.
And I won every single competition my next year in semi-pro, including Worlds, and that was honestly a huge confidence booster from competition to competition, like one by one winning every single one. I was just so confident in my riding and my abilities that it really carried over into the competition.
That's really cool. Like, did you ever at any time, like during your practice or competing, like feel discouraged at all? Do you remember any time during the semi-pro year feeling like that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember
struggling?
like specific times maybe, but I'm sure I for sure felt discouraged. Like I used to be really hard on myself too, like get super upset at with my riding and just want to learn. And sometimes I think that's good, but sometimes it can hinder you too. So just really focusing on keeping it fun is what helps me to keep improving, because if I'm not having fun, then I'm not riding good. And but yeah, I don't know. I think that I was definitely discouraged at times, but like the big goal for me was to win Worlds that next year. So I just kept my eyes on that and kept practicing.
Okay. Yeah.
What about you for your semi-pro year from amateur?
Yeah.
How did yours go?
So, yeah, my second year in amateur, I did really well. Got first at all of them. Got first at Worlds. That was awesome. And then I moved into semi-pro, feeling really confident. I thought it was really cool that I was in semi-pro.
Yeah, it's such a cool feeling to like have like pro by it. I remember that. It was just the best.
Having pro by it, and I liked the word outlaw too.
Yeah.
Like that was just like a cool term to be called. I'm an outlaw rider. Yeah.
Yeah. Outlaw is what semi-pro was back in the day.
Yeah. And I did really well that season too. I didn't get first at every single one. I had I mean, I got first at most of them, but I had like a couple second places and like a few third places. So I was a little bit more humbled, but it was, still really fun, and I, loved it. And I think that was kind of good that I didn't continue just like a winning streak through that, especially with pro coming up.
Right.
Because, you're not always going to win, and you are going to be humbled a lot.
Right.
And so kind of easing into that was nice, being okay with getting second and third, because, sometimes a lot of people can still get really frustrated whether they're open about that to other people or not. It can still really bother them sometimes, and it has bothered me at times before. But getting used to that was nice. And I did remember that there were times kind of like thinking to pro, like kind of looking to the future of what it might be like when I get there, feeling like I wasn't ready for it and stuff like that. I felt like I was putting too much pressure on myself, thinking I need to learn these tricks right now. And so, my competition life was really great. But some of my practice time at home was more, stressful than it needed to be. Thinking that I needed to learn some of these more difficult tricks when in reality there was no rush to do that. And some of the other stuff that I was doing was, very good and sufficient for like a pro level.
Yeah.
So,
and so what would you say to people who are in like amateur or semi-pro? And like amateur is super stacked now. Same with semi-pro. Like there's so many good kids that are, the end goal is to get to pro. Like that was our goal too. Would you tell them to take their time in amateur and in semi-pro? Don't rush trying to move up to pro. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think there are times when you should move up, times when you shouldn't. I mean, I do think it's okay to take your time, but, you don't want to be a sandbagger.
Yeah.
I was called a sandbagger for a little bit.
Really?
Yeah, I was. And that was because I got first at every event my amateur year. So I totally get it. Also, it being my second year as an amateur rider. I mean, I do think it was somewhat okay because I didn't place at Worlds my first year, and I only had experience at 3 events. So I didn't really know what the rest of the competition life was like.
Right.
And then, I mean, from there I moved up on like just the normal way where I competed through a division and then went through. But yeah, answer your question, I think it's okay to stay in your division for a little bit unless, you're always getting first place or second place. I mean, I think it is good to challenge yourself,
Right.
especially jumping from amateur to semi-pro. I think that's a jump you should definitely go ahead and make because you're going to do really well and you're going to challenge yourself a lot more, even though it's still not as challenging as the jump from semi-pro to pro.
Right.
So I think that jump is one you can, take your time on a little bit, unless you're, told to move up by the competition organizers. But ultimately, I do think it's important that we don't sandbag in divisions and let the lower divisions, continue to grow and push the sport without, preventing others from being able to compete type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, in my eyes, like, whenever I was an amateur, like, you were trying to learn the top tricks of amateur. You're trying to get to the highest level of your division. And I think spending your time in lower divisions, like, as long as you can, like, obviously, like you're saying, like, you don't want to be miles above your competition, but, like, staying in that division is going to push the lower division too to be better. And then from there, semi-pro is going to get better too, and it's going to push the sport altogether. Plus, you're going to get more confidence in your riding and more competition time. But yeah, I think maybe taking your time and really don't necessarily rush moving up to pro or trying to get to pro super fast in my eyes.
Yeah, unless you're throwing like a lot of pro level tricks, and you kind of just need to work on consistency, then I think it's okay to kind of go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
Because that's honestly what I did. I still have to work on consistency, and I'm not, at the top of the podium all the time or on the podium all the time. So I kind of lost my train of thought there, but
Yeah. Somebody who I think has done a really good job is Sammy
yeah.
from juniors. Like he was in juniors and then amateur, right?
Hmm.
I don't know if he went to amateur, but yeah, I think he did amateur, then semi-pro, and now he's in pro. And you can see that his confidence has stayed with him from
Hmm.
all the way from juniors to now being in pro. Like his confidence level hasn't dropped, and you can see that in his riding. Like he believes that he can do all the tricks that he wants to. And I think part of that is from taking your time and winning the competitions that you're going to and really focusing on getting your reps in and going to as many comps as you can, as well as setting goals for yourself and learning the tricks that you want to learn.
Yeah, and also like kind of learning and getting used to understanding like the scoring system and how
Yeah.
you're scored, and that's something that a lot of people don't do, or something that people don't necessarily do and like later in their riding life. Like I haven't necessarily done that a ton until like I started riding in pro. Like I would look at the scores and stuff, but I wouldn't necessarily think, okay, well, like, how do I compare to other riders, which isn't always the most important thing, but it's nice to understand like what you can do better with the
Right.
riding.
Yeah.
But
Okay, so something that kind of ties into all this and what we were talking about before is confidence and maybe how to build confidence in your riding. How do you feel like whenever you were in your amateur year and your semi-pro year, we were talking about confidence and being confident because of how well we were doing and also maybe how much we were riding and practicing and just feeling confident in your riding. How do you think you nurture that and get better at that, creating confidence?
so I think it was definitely, at least for us, it was a lot easier when we were younger and amateur and outlaw.
Yeah.
Especially because we were doing really well with our riding.
Mm-hmm.
We got to this point where we kind of broke through, or we opened this door to our riding where we were able to compete really well. We had really good, riding skills and stuff like that. And the competitions were really fun. There was a lot of, like, we were kids, so we were playing a lot, swimming around, just hanging out with a lot of other kids and friends. And a lot of them were really, encouraging with the riding and stuff. So we were all able to help each other out and encourage each other to do well and not be too upset if we didn't do well and stuff like that. And then I think when you get older, it can be a little harder, of course, or when
Yeah.
you get to a position in your riding where you're having to work harder for it and there are more setbacks and stuff. I think the biggest thing for me, I mean, I kind of had to learn it through like semi-pro and pro, like that transition, because that's when I started, losing more and stuff like that. And there was, a streak of trying to find confidence or figure out where my mindset was with losing. Like, how do I
Yeah.
feel about this? How am I going to go to the next event, and how am I going to ride knowing that I am probably going to lose, when before I was thinking, oh, I'm going to win this, or I feel
Yeah.
very confident that I'm going to.
Yeah, and like that, it kind of ties back to what I was saying earlier. Is like when I was an amateur, I never put a cap on myself because I didn't know what to expect. And now that we've been competing for however many years, like we've learned patterns and we've learned what to expect, and almost like have all this information of what a competition looks like and what our riding looks like, that at least for myself, sometimes I put like a cap on myself of what I can learn or what I can do. And like that's something that's so awesome about being an amateur or semi-pro, and like not putting a cap on myself ever. I just always believed that I could learn these tricks. And something that, yeah, I've been trying to really focus on is trying to get that belief back into myself of like learning new tricks and knowing that I can do these new tricks and keep progressing almost.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, there's definitely different caps that we put on ourselves. Like when I got to pro, it was just the simple fact that I wasn't, my riding level wasn't good enough compared to the other riders.
Yeah.
And so that was my cap. I was thinking, this rider, and this rider, I'm not going to beat them. Those riders are going to beat me at this event. so I'm gonna be here, or
Yeah.
this is where I can, get to, like,
Yeah.
type of
And
thing.
that's like a cap that you put on yourself before the competition even
Hmm.
starts. And I think that plays a big role. And I mean, how do you think that you can work through that, maybe off water or on water, of like believing in yourself? Do you think it's just the work that you put in and like believing that you're going to be able to land these tricks? Or do you think that there's other things you could do too?
I think the biggest thing is really trying to be present and aware of the different things that are happy with and
Mm-hmm.
what you get joy from, like with your riding or your competitions, or just what you enjoy getting out of it. Whether that is getting a first place or winning a title, or getting cool sponsors, or just riding really well at home to have fun. Just figuring out what that is really important, and just trying to focus on that, and look at the different things, all the different setbacks, the hard things that you have to get through to get to those things, as just, I don't know, there are different ways that you can look at it, but I like to think of those things as just one little stepping stone to the thing that I want.
Yeah, that's a
And
good way.
it's something that you can get past and accomplish. And I think the more that you work on having that confidence and work on holding on to like your passions with it, you're going to really be able to better retain your appreciation and your joy for what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And just because something happened in the past doesn't mean it has to happen in the future. And I think that's maybe a big problem that a lot of riders run into, and including myself. Like, say you fall on this trick, then that puts it into your head that you're going to fall on that trick again. But that doesn't mean that it has to happen in the future, and figuring out how to get past that barrier of that, like, it doesn't equal that forever. Like, you
Hmm.
can land that trick in competition, new patterns can happen and new things can happen, and I think it's all about just believing in that.
Yeah. And also, too, like every point in my riding life, I've just tons of different times I've thought or haven't thought of like the tricks that I could be able to do in the future. Or I might think like, I don't know, there are a lot of tricks that I would never think I'd be doing,
Mm-hmm.
or I might not even think about like landing certain tricks just because I didn't think it was possible. Or it wasn't something that crossed my mind. But now I am doing a lot of those tricks. And there were different times when I would look back and think, man, like I'm still doing those tricks, and I thought that I'd never be able to do those tricks.
Yeah.
But also too, like Dylan and I, like we were talking about how we started off with really good amateur years and stuff, and there are a lot of other riders that don't start off, with really good years necessarily, or they might be an amateur or semi-pro, or still just in juniors, and they're not, happy with their riding, or they feel like they're already getting stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And just really try to work on finding, like what we said, like finding that passion, and try to break through it, because that's just going to be one little stepping stone in your riding career. It might be early, it's an early on situation that you got to deal with, but once you get past it, you'll just be looking back on it like it was nothing. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can see it in like even everyday riding. Like, if you're having a good first like couple runs like of your day, you can really see that carry over for your whole session. Do you agree? Like, if I have like a good first couple of runs, then you feel confident in your riding, and that in turn helps you to believe that you can land the tricks that you've been working on, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
new tricks. Like, if you're landing the tricks really well that you're working on, or that you already know, then it makes you feel better that you can land maybe new tricks, or just
Yeah.
it makes your whole session better.
It really does. And like those are the moments when you should really try to be fully present as much as possible, and just try to be aware of all of the things that are making you happy in that moment.
Yeah, and like to your point of being present, some days I'll be riding super good for myself and feeling super good, and like my pumps feel good, my airs, everything feels good. And then in my mind I'll think in my head like, "Oh, this is good, but like compared to the top of the top, this isn't even good."
Yeah.
So like you can self-sabotage and make yourself feel like you're not good enough. So to your point, like, yeah, stay in the present moment and enjoy it, and like that's gonna build up to being able to beat the top pros.
Yes, sir. Because yeah, like you'll get to moments in your riding or throughout your competition career, and you'll be frustrated about something, and those moments usually come with you out, like without you really noticing initially.
Yeah.
And that's why we can easily slip up and let it get to us more than it might need to.
Right.
But that's why you want to try to pay attention and be present, and not just the good moments but the bad moments too, and try to
Yeah.
ask yourself, why do I feel like this, whether it's a good moment or a bad moment,
Yeah.
because that's how you can better realize the situation that you're in. Because you might think, oh man, like this wind at the competition, like this isn't great, like I'm gonna mess up,
Yeah.
this is the end for me, whatever. But if you can like realize that you're not feeling good, and you can ask yourself like, well, why am I feeling bad? It's because of this. Well, I'm just projecting. I'm just assuming that I'm going
Right.
to ride bad.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at something that could potentially mess me up.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point too of like the confidence thing and making sure that you feel good. Like at the 2 weeks ago at that competition, like I remember being in the water after my first fall and feeling like I'm not doing good and like I don't feel confident right now. And there's a feeling of feeling confident versus not confident. And like you feel that in your everyday riding, but it's even more so in the competition. And that, like, as I started to think about it more after the competition, is because I wasn't practicing enough. I wasn't doing what I needed to do well in that competition. So while I was in the competition, I wasn't feeling good. So um, it all comes down to like day to day and feeling present and making sure that you're doing the things that you're doing. So like on the point of talking about competitions and maybe feeling ready, whether it's the work that you put in before the comp or during the comp, like is there anything that you do pre-competition, like at the competition? Do you have any like superstitions or things that you like to do before you ride?
Um, Honestly, I'm very inconsistent with a lot of things like that.
Yeah.
And I've just like learned over time that if I kind of overthink, then I'm not going to be in the right headspace.
Yeah.
And so that's what I try not to do, is overthink. So
Yeah.
I've just tried to, I've really just tried to be calm and be present and just be aware of where I am at the moment and what I'm doing then and there, as opposed to trying to like think too much about like what I'm going to do or how I might ride, or like what do I do if I fall on this trick type of thing. And a lot of people might, plan out their runs, and that's not necessarily a bad thing at all, or to like practice your run a lot. But for me, that's not necessarily the best thing.
Yeah.
So like I used to, sit there and like over visualize or like do maneuvers, and like sometimes I do that a little bit now because it can be helpful, but I would just get so much in my head, like thinking, okay, like if I do this trick, then like I gotta do this trick next, or like if I fall on this one, should I get up and do it again, or should I would just ping pong back and forth in my head with just different thoughts and ideas, and I would kind of just get too confused and just out of the loop. I don't know.
Yeah. For me, I usually like to have like a run idea of what I want to do. It honestly has probably never gone the exact way that I've planned. But I do like to have a plan. And like before, something that I've read about too, which I would like to implement, is like people for their sport will do like a certain warm up, like during practice or before they do something to like get into the mindset of being in maybe a competition. So whether that's like doing a certain stretch or doing like a certain jump or something like that, but it like triggers in their head that it like transitions them from everyday life to competition mode or to their sport, whatever they're doing. But that's something that I would like to implement, is like doing a routine like on the boat every time we go out, whether that's like 5 jump squats or a little stretch, that like that triggers my head that it's competition time and I can transition from everyday life to riding time.
Yeah, when you say that, it just kind of makes me think there are things that I kind of do subconsciously that I notice that do help for
Yeah.
sure. Like some like jump hops or whatever, just jumping around,
Yeah.
kind of working my legs a little bit. Not like squats or lunges really,
Mm-hmm.
but kind of working on just jumping high with like my toes and my calves, just springing up like a basketball player, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and then like when I was saying about being like present, I think the best or most like calming time for me is when I'm in the water.
Yeah. Right when you hit the water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when I'm in the water, I just try to, listen to it and like just be chill, float around in it, not
There's
get
so
too
much
worried.
to take in that moment too, especially at your first competitions when you're
Yeah.
sitting in the water waiting for the boat to come back. It's just like the work that you've put in is the work that you've put in, and you're gonna get out what you've put in.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty cool feeling, and something that I always do is I always get my hair wet, like whenever I
Yes.
jump in, like at home. Like I always like to submerge myself, so I do that at competitions too. Like it feels weird if my hair's dry.
Yeah, and it can just wake you up too.
Yeah,
It's always a good thing to do that. And sometimes it makes you subconsciously think, oh, well, I've already fallen, or my hair's already wet, so I don't have a first fall to get out of the way, or something like that. I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah. I remember when I first started too. Is like I would always with the rope carve out, do a little ollie in the flats, throw it in, and I don't do that as much anymore. But something that I would like to implement is like some sort of pre-competition routine that I can carry over to everyday riding, so that it like snaps me into the competition mode.
Yeah, what do you think? Like sometimes I try to think about what we're doing when we go out to just have fun and ride,
Mm-hmm.
even though it is somewhat practice time because we're just trying to improve our riding and help each other out.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think are things that we do that we might not really notice that help us, just feel comfortable and have a good time out there?
I think something that we always do, and something that I feel like we always have to do, is put like a layer of wax on our board.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something that we always do. So like maybe the wax, even just like putting on the jacket is maybe like a trigger too. And then from there, I don't know. Do you notice anything that we do?
Honestly, I was just trying to see if you
Yeah.
noticed anything.
Yeah,
But-
I think the wax thing is something obviously we always do because we need it, but also like it just is almost calming, like the sound and just putting on your wax. You're about to go ride, and that's like the best feeling ever, dude. Is just right before you get to ride, just building up to that moment of jumping in the water. It's a good feeling.
Or like maybe there's something that you do like when you're in the water right before you get pulled up
Yeah,
that you could maybe kind of realize and notice and then start doing that before your competition run.
yeah,
Or like as you're getting pulled out of the water, maybe when you're in competition you just stand there and wait, or maybe at home you're already kind of moving around just because you're already comfortable.
yeah,
So maybe you can try to throw that in the competition run.
yeah.
Like holding the rope, do a little cutout and snap or something.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Like I was saying, like a carve out. I used to always go out, do an ollie in the flats. I feel like that kind of warms up your legs a little bit. I think I'll implement that more again.
Awesome.
Do you have anything that you would like to implement? Like whether it's like a pre-surf routine, or you're not super into routines, huh?
I'm not super into routines, but I mean, a lot of people are getting a little competitive with the risk category,
Yeah,
which I think is actually kind of exciting.
I like it.
For some reason, I'm very intrigued now with throwing a big trick right off the bat
Yeah, it's scary.
and having the risk there. I don't know. I'm just ready to throw it all out there. So maybe I'm just trying to. Maybe at home when I practice, I'll
That's
just
a good
start
idea.
throwing a risk trick every now and then.
Just first trick you get up. We should do that. Like the first trick we get up, throw like a big
Back
spin
big.
or 3 shove. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be sick, dude. I think we should work on that. But anything else you got to add?
I got nothing else for this one. I thought that was pretty solid.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
Yeah, we want y'all to build some confidence and power through the hard times and become a pro and
Yeah,
win.
something cool too about like talking about this is sometimes you don't even realize like it's honestly helping me too at the same time, because you don't realize what's in your own head sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And like talking about it helps you to realize maybe why you think certain ways or why you're doing certain things. So as much as it's helping them, it's also helping me and probably you too.
Helping me a ton for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely brings up different thoughts or ideas.
Yeah. Well, that was a fun one, Jake. Episode 14.
Episode 14,
Peace.
Wakesurfology. Peace.